Commander Vex Talon adjusted his 4 eye stalks, watching the newest batch of cadets shuffle into the Academy's training hall. Most were from the civilized species, tall, graceful Altrurians with their silver skin gleaming under the harsh lights, stocky Corvan warriors built like walking tanks, and those insufferably arrogant Zenthran who thought their telepathic abilities made them superior to everyone else. And then there were the humans. 2 of them stood at the back, looking about as intimidating as a pair of newly hatched grub worms. The male, Marcus Vale, had brown hair that looked like he'd stuck his finger in an energy socket, and skin so pale you could practically see through it. The female, Zara Quinn, was even smaller, barely reaching his shoulder, with fiery red hair that somehow managed to look both wild and perfectly controlled at the same time. Pathetic, muttered Sub-Commander Drex through his mandibles, his insect-like features twisting with disgust. The Galactic Council actually expects us to train these meat sacks alongside our elite. Vex Talon's secondary mouth curled into what passed for a smile among his species. Oh, but Drex, think of the entertainment value. Besides, the betting pools are already reaching astronomical numbers. Most give them 3 days before they wash out completely. The human female seemed to sense their conversation impossible, given the distance and the fact that they were speaking in clicks and whistles, and turned to look directly at them. Her green eyes held something that made Vex Talon's skin crawl: amusement. Not fear, not intimidation, not even determination. Pure, unadulterated amusement, as if she was in on some joke that nobody else understood. Cadets. Vex Talon's voice boomed across the training hall, his vocal cords producing the perfect frequency to instill respect and terror. Welcome to the most prestigious military academy in the galaxy. You are here because your species believes you have potential. I am here to prove them wrong. A few nervous chuckles from the Altrurians. The Corvans simply grunted, which was their equivalent of polite applause. The Zenthran maintained their usual superior expressions, probably communicating telepathically about how primitive everyone else was. The humans. Marcus was trying very hard not to smile, while Zara had actually crossed her arms and was nodding as if she completely agreed with his assessment. The mortality rate for this program is approximately 15%, Vex Talon continued, savoring each word. Most of you will leave here in body bags. The lucky ones will simply be discharged for incompetence, cowardice, or general uselessness to the war effort. Now the Altrurians looked properly terrified. Good. Your first exercise will be simple survival. You will be divided into teams of 4 and dropped into the Cathara combat zone. This is a moon we use for recreational hunting. The ecosystem has been carefully designed to kill you in the most creative ways possible. Acid rain that melts through, standard armor in 6 minutes, predators that can smell fear from 3 kilometers away, in plants that scream loud enough to rupture your eardrums before they digest you alive. Marcus actually raised his hand. Excuse me, sir, but did you say the plants scream? Yes, Cadet Vale, is it? The shrieking devourer vines produce a sound at precisely the frequency needed to liquefy most species' internal organs. Any other brilliant questions? Well, now I'm just curious about the volume levels. Like, are we talking rock concert loud, or more of a jet engine situation? The entire hall fell silent. Even the Zenthran stopped their mental chatter. Nobody, and Vex Talon could not stress this enough, nobody made jokes during his briefings. He'd seen grown Corvan warriors wet themselves when he described training exercises. I beg your pardon, Cadet? Marcus shrugged, completely unbothered by the attention of 57 sets of alien eyes. I mean, if it's just really loud, humans actually have pretty decent tolerance for noise. We invented something called heavy metal music that's basically weaponized sound, and our teenagers voluntarily listen to it for fun. So I'm wondering if this is actually going to be a problem, or if it's more of a minor inconvenience. Zara snorted, actually snorted, and added, plus, most of our species is already functionally deaf from said music, explosions, and general stupidity. Marcus here once stood next to a jet engine for 3 hours because he thought it was cool. It was very cool, Marcus said defensively. And I can still hear perfectly fine. Mostly. Vex Talon felt one of his eye stalks twitch involuntarily. In 30 years of military service, across 12 different species in countless combat zones, he had never encountered anything quite like this. It was as if the humans existed in a completely different reality, where mortal danger was some sort of amusing inconvenience. Perhaps, he said slowly, you would prefer to volunteer for immediate deployment to the combat zone? Save us all some time? Actually, that sounds great, Zara said brightly. When do we leave? The Eltrurian next to her made a sound like a dying solar whale. The Corvan started backing away as if human stupidity might be contagious. The Zenthren were probably having telepathic seizures trying to comprehend this level of apparent madness. Sub-Commander Drex leaned over to whisper in Vex Talon's ear, "Sir, perhaps we should reconsider the team assignments. Place them with our most experienced cadets to minimize casualties?" "Oh no," Vex Talon said, his voice dripping with malicious glee. "I have a much better idea." He activated the holographic display, showing the team assignments. Team 7 will consist of Cadets Vale and Quinn, along with Eltrurian honor student Nara and Zenthren prodigy Kethmore. The Eltrurian, a tall, elegant female with the kind of perfect features that suggested centuries of genetic optimization, looked like she might actually faint. The Zenthren male's superior expression flickered for just a moment before returning to its usual arrogant mask. Sir Nara spoke up, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of her species. "Perhaps there has been some mistake. My academic scores place me in the top percentile of." "There has been no mistake, Cadet. You will be leading this team. But sir, the humans will be your responsibility. Try to keep them alive long enough to provide some entertainment." Kethmore stepped forward, his silver skin shimmering with indignation. "Commander, with respect, my telepathic capabilities would be better utilized with a team capable of strategic thinking. These primitives will compromise the mission through their obvious lack of..." "Their obvious lack of what, exactly?" Zara asked, turning to face the Zenthren with that same amused expression. "Intelligence? Survival instincts? Fashion sense?" Marcus nodded seriously. "To be fair, our fashion sense is objectively terrible. Have you seen what humans wear? We put our feet in little leather prisons and call it business attire." "The socks alone are a crime against nature," Zara agreed. "But the other stuff? Well, we'll see about that." Kethmore's telepathic abilities were apparently strong enough to pick up the surface thoughts of most species, but when he focused on the humans, Vex Talon noticed something interesting. The Zenthrens' confident expression wavered, replaced by something that might have been confusion, or possibly concern. "Is there a problem, Cadet Kethmore?" Vex Talon asked. "I know, sir. No problem." But there was definitely a problem, and Vex Talon filed that information away for future reference. In his experience, when a telepathic species couldn't read someone, it usually meant one of three things. The target had exceptional mental discipline, they were completely insane, or they were thinking about something so alien that it didn't translate properly. Given what he'd observed of humans so far, it could honestly be any combination of the three. "Excellent. Transport to the Cathara combat zone departs in 6 hours. I suggest you use that time to make peace with whatever deities your species worship, because you're going to need all the divine intervention you can get." As the cadets filed out to collect their equipment, Vex Talon couldn't help but notice that the humans were the only ones who seemed genuinely excited about the prospect of being dropped onto a moon specifically designed to kill them in horrifying ways. "Sir," Sub-Commander Drex said quietly, "the betting pools are already shifting. Some of the senior staff are actually placing money on the humans." "That's absurd." They're primitives from a barely civilized world that only achieved spaceflight a few decades ago. Yes, sir. But there are some interesting reports in their species file. Vex Talon pulled up the data on his personal display, scrolling through the official documentation. Standard bipedal mammals, unremarkable physical capabilities, average intelligence by galactic standards, no special abilities or natural weapons. But then he reached the cultural assessment section, and his mood shifted from amusement to something approaching concern. Humans, it seemed, had a rather unique approach to survival. While most species had evolved to avoid danger through intelligence, camouflage, or superior firepower, humans had apparently decided that the best way to deal with mortal peril was to charge directly at it while making jokes. They had a term for it, hold my beer. The implications were disturbing. 6 hours later, Vex Talon stood in the command center, watching the live feeds from Cathara as the transport ships deployed their cargo of fresh meat across the hostile landscape. Most teams were already implementing standard survival protocols, finding shelter, establishing perimeters, conducting environmental assessments. Team 7's transport had landed in Sector Omega-9, arguably the most dangerous region on the entire moon. Acid rain was scheduled to begin in 4 hours. The local predator population included at least 6 species of carnivorous megafauna, and the terrain was littered with the kind of death traps that made experienced military engineers weep with professional admiration. Perfect, Vex Talon murmured, settling in to watch the show. The humans were going to die horribly, and it was going to be absolutely fascinating. The first thing that went wrong with Vex Talon's entertainment was that Team 7 didn't immediately start dying. Instead, Marcus Vale looked around at the hellish landscape of twisted metal spires, bubbling acid pools, and what appeared to be trees made of actual razor wire, and said, "Huh, reminds me of Detroit." "More like that camping trip we took in Australia," Zara replied, casually stepping over a plant that was literally trying to grab her ankle with thorny tentacles. "Remember when everything tried to kill us for 2 weeks straight?" "Oh yeah, good times. Though I think the spiders here are smaller." Silnara, the Altrurian honors student, was hyperventilating through her gills. "Smaller? Those arachnids were the size of dinner plates." "Exactly," Marcus said cheerfully. "Back home, we've got spiders that can eat birds. These guys? Barely snack-sized." In the command center, Vex Talon felt his first eye stalk begin to twitch again. Surely they're exaggerating. Sub-Commander Drex pulled up Earth's wildlife database on the secondary screen. After 30 seconds of scrolling through images of creatures that looked like they'd been designed by a sadistic god with anger management issues, he quietly closed the file. "Sir, I think we may have made an error in our threat assessment." On screen, Keth Moore was trying to establish telepathic contact with the local predators to gauge their hunting patterns. This was standard Zenthran tactical doctrine: understand your enemy's mind, predict their behavior, avoid confrontation through superior intelligence. What he discovered instead was that every single carnivore within a 3-kilometer radius was currently focused on the same thought: stay the hell away from the weird bipeds who smelled like apex predators but looked like prey. "This is unusual," he admitted to Silnara. "The native fauna seems to be exhibiting avoidance behavior." "That's probably because Zara hasn't showered since we left Earth," Marcus called out, apparently having overheard despite being 20 meters away examining what looked like a landmine disguised as a flower. "She's got that I will end you aura going on." "I showered yesterday," Zara protested. "With what? That industrial degreaser you call shampoo? It gets the job done." Silnara watched this exchange with growing horror. These beings were treating a survival scenario like some sort of recreational activity. They should be terrified. They should be implementing emergency protocols. They should be asking her, the team leader with superior tactical training, for guidance. Instead, Marcus had just picked up the explosive flower to get a better look at it. Hey Zara, check this out. It's like a botanical grenade. Think it's motion activated or pressure sensitive? Only one way to find out, she replied, pulling out a stick and poking the device. The explosion that followed was visible from orbit. When the smoke cleared, Nara was curled in a protective ball behind the nearest rock outcropping. Keth Moore was flat on the ground with his hands over his head. And the humans were standing exactly where they'd been before, covered in soot but otherwise unharmed. Definitely motion activated, Marcus noted, brushing debris off his uniform. Good to know. Should we map the other ones? Zara asked. Nah, we'll just remember to duck next time. In the command center, 3 different instructors were now taking medication for stress-induced cardiac episodes. Vex Talon had progressed from simple eye twitching to a full-body tremor that made his exoskeleton rattle. How, he whispered, how are they still alive? Sir, one of the monitoring technicians called out, you might want to see this. Team 7's biometric readings are unusual. Vex Talon looked at the data and felt something that might have been fear creep up his spine. While Nara and Keth Moore showed elevated stress hormones, increased heart rates, and all the normal indicators of beings in mortal peril, the humans displayed patterns that shouldn't have been possible. Their stress hormones were elevated, yes, but not in the way that indicated fear. These were the chemical signatures of excitement, anticipation, and something the computer was having trouble identifying but kept labeling as aggressive joy. They're enjoying this, he said in disbelief. It gets worse, sir. Look at their tactical assessment scores. The holographic display showed a real-time analysis of each team member's strategic decision-making. Nara was performing exactly as expected, careful, methodical, following established protocols. Keth Moore was using his telepathic abilities to gather intelligence before making calculated moves. The humans appeared to be operating on what the computer could only describe as controlled chaos theory. Their decisions made no sense according to any recognized tactical doctrine, but somehow kept producing positive results. Sir, incoming priority alert from Sector Omega 9. The main screen flickered to show a new feed. Team 7 had encountered their first major predator. The Catharan Razorclaw was a magnificent specimen, standing 4 meters tall with natural armor plating, retractable blade arms, and a mouth full of teeth that could chew through battle tank armor. It was also currently backing away from Zara Quinn, who was making what appeared to be aggressive eye contact while slowly reaching for something on her belt. Oh, you're a big boy, aren't you? She cooed in a voice that somehow managed to sound both admiring and deeply threatening. Look at those pretty teeth. I bet you think you're real scary. The Razorclaw's confusion was palpable. In its limited understanding of the universe, small soft things were supposed to run away while making high-pitched noises. They were not supposed to speak to it like it was an oversized house pet with behavioral issues. Marcus, meanwhile, had circled around behind the creature and was examining its armor plating with professional interest. Zara, check out the articulation on these shoulder joints. Bet there's a weak point right here. He poked the Razorclaw in what was indeed a vulnerable spot. The creature spun around with a roar that shattered 3 monitoring devices back in the command center. Oh, now you're just showing off, Zara said disapprovingly. Honestly, the ego on this one. What happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for the next 50 years. Instead of using weapons, advanced technology, or even basic survival tactics, the humans simply talked the Razorclaw to death. Not literally, but the creature became so thoroughly confused by their complete lack of appropriate fear responses that it eventually just wandered away to find prey that made sense. Unbelievable, Keth Moore muttered. They defeated an apex predator through psychological warfare. We didn't defeat anything, Marcus protested. We just had a conversation. Right, buddy? He waved at the retreating Razorclaw, which actually paused to look back before continuing its dignified retreat. By the time the acid rain started, Team 7 had encountered 17 different types of deadly flora, 4 species of hostile fauna, 3 separate environmental hazards designed to kill experienced soldiers, and 1 naturally occurring death trap that the designers had labeled absolutely do not touch under any circumstances. Marcus had touched it immediately. It turned out to be some sort of crystalline formation that produced beautiful musical tones when struck. He and Zara spent 20 minutes composing what they called alien death rock before Silnara finally convinced them to find shelter. The shelter they found was a cave that was definitely, absolutely, beyond any shadow of doubt, inhabited by something that wanted to eat them. "Perfect," Zara said, settling down with her back against the cave wall. "Nice and cozy. Should we not be concerned about whatever lives in here?" Silnara asked. "Nah," Marcus replied, already unpacking his rations. "If something nasty lived here, it would have attacked by now. Either it's not home, or it's smart enough to recognize that we're more trouble than we're worth." A low growling sound echoed from deeper in the cave, followed by what sounded like claws scraping against stone. "See?" Marcus said. "That's the sound of something reconsidering its life choices." The growling stopped. In the command center, Vex Talon was now consuming his 3rd bottle of liquid courage while staring at the feeds in absolute bewilderment. According to every tactical manual ever written, Team 7 should have been dead 6 times over by now. Instead, they were having what appeared to be a pleasant camping trip in hell. "Sir," Sub-Commander Drex said quietly, "the betting pools have shifted again. Current odds are 3-1 in favor of the humans not only surviving, but somehow turning this into a recreational activity. That's impossible. No species is that adaptable. No beings can be that utterly without survival instincts while simultaneously being impossible to kill. With respect, sir, perhaps that's exactly why they're impossible to kill." As if to prove his point, the cave monster, a Catharan shadow stalker with natural stealth capabilities and enough venom to kill a dozen Corvan warriors, slowly backed deeper into its own cave rather than deal with the strange creatures who were now singing something called Kumbaya, while roasting their rations over a chemical fire. Vex Talon put his head in his hands and tried to figure out where his military career had gone so terribly, wonderfully wrong. Outside, the acid rain continued to fall, and Team 7 continued to treat their survival scenario like the galaxy's most dangerous camping trip, completely unaware that they were rewriting everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about warfare, survival, and the fundamental nature of intelligence itself. The humans, it was becoming clear, were going to be either the greatest military asset the galaxy had ever seen, or the cause of its complete psychological breakdown. Possibly both.